Today we begin our series called The Beautiful Book. What is the goal of this series? It's very simple, that we will see the Bible as the beautiful book, the beautiful masterpiece that God has given to us. God's greatest masterpiece placed in our hands. Who is this course designed for? Firstly, it's designed for Christians, however mature you are, however long in the faith, who have never read through the Bible even once. Secondly, it's for Christians who have read through the Bible, maybe through a reading plan, maybe through an ad hoc way of reading through the Bible, but somehow after reading through the entire Bible, never really saw how all the 66 books are perfectly, beautifully connected. Thirdly, it is for the Christians who just struggle to read the Bible. They don't mind going to a sermon, they don't mind reading a verse with a long devotional, but just to open the Bible and read it, there seems to be a barrier. They find it confusing, difficult, and so they never really go into the Bible. So, this is designed for such people. Let me just first emphasize this, that this is not a reading plan. You know, a reading plan is something that sort of disciplines you to go through the Bible, a few chapters a day of Old Testament, a few chapters of New Testament, so that you will eventually go through the whole Bible. You know, it sort of gives you discipline. Now, this series is not so much as trying to give you discipline, but to help you to be delighted in the Bible. That, wow, you want to read it, not so much you've been disciplined to. It's also not an overview. You know, some people ask me, is this like a Old Testament survey, a New Testament survey? No. This is not meant to give you knowledge of how things fit in, how the kings fit in. No, it's not to fill your head with knowledge, but rather this program is designed to fill your heart with love for the Bible. It's definitely not a commentary. Some say, wow, wonderful. At last we can go deep into the Bible with your series. I said, no, please. If you want to go deep, there are many commentaries on particular books, particular passages of scripture. I would recommend that you go for those commentaries. So, now what are the objectives at the end of this series? The number one objective is you will say, wow, the Bible is so amazingly connected. I never knew why each book was so wonderfully placed in the right position. Not that, wow, this book is very good and then I like this book. No. The whole book, the whole one book, not 66 books, is so wonderful. You see, many of us as Christians, we have a favorite chapter, some have a favorite verse, and so we sort of build our Christianity around those verses we love. Some love verses of how God will bless them. So a whole prosperity gospel theology comes out of that. Some will have another doctrine about baptism. It's oh my goodness, everything is baptism, and a whole denomination comes around a few verses on the importance of baptism. Some would have about spiritual gifts, and they would have built a whole church around spiritual gifts. That's why Christianity has over 40,000 denominations. Each one probably not wrong, but each one focusing on one aspect, the verses or the chapter or the passage they like, and they build a whole life around it, a whole church around it. Now, at the end of this series, I hope none of us will be in this business of taking a text out of context to make a pretext. I hope at the end of this series, we will see every verse in the context, not of that chapter or that passage, but of the context of the Bible. The Bible is one book, not disjointed book. All right? So that's number one. Number two objective is at the end of this series, we will say not only wonderful book, we'll say wonderful God. Amazing God. Not just a provider God, not just a judging God, but a wonderful God. You see him in all his beauty because you've read through the Bible and you know this God. So in other words, at the end of this series, you will begin to enter, every time you open the Bible, you're not focusing on yourself, not saying, what verse can I find in this Bible that will bless me, that will help me? I'm looking for like a lucky dip, pick up one verse that will help me. No. At the end of this course, you will read the Bible with a focus on God. What can I find about God? Rather than what can I find from God for me? All right? So that's another. A lot of Christians read the Bible with the wrong focus. What can I get from God? Rather than how can I know this wonderful God? So third objective is then you will be a Christian who will always be in the will of God because you know God well. And when you know God well, you know what God likes. And when you know what God likes, you will do the will of God. So I hope that you, at the end of this, will be a Christian living in the will of God, not because a certain verse told you to do it, not every time should I do something, let me see what verse can I find to support my decision, but rather, I know this is the will of God because I know God. It's like I knew my father very well, and I never had to ask him, Dad, would you like me to read this book? Would you like me to have this kind of friends? Would you like me to go to this kind of movies? I never needed to ask him. I knew what he liked because I knew him. So I could live in obedience to him simply because I knew him well.